About 15 seconds or so. Okay, you're live on YouTube. If you want to take it away, David, it's all yours.
Welcome everybody to another presentation, another get together for with the Hyperledger special interest group in the area of media and entertainment. So today we have with us both on Zoom and also streaming live on YouTube, Mr. Matt Mason, who's Chief Content Officer over at Palm NFT Studio, which is certainly one of the more intriguing and adventurous players in the NFT space. You may have noticed in recent news that they have at very least 3 major projects on the go. The one that has attracted most attention, even in the mainstream press, is the apparently long-standing project with Damien Hirst, the British artist who's sometimes listed as the wealthiest living artist on the planet, which may or may not be true. But he has a project with these guys called The Currency, which is connecting NFTs to a limited series, I think, of 10,000 prints. Is that correct, Matt?
That's correct, yeah.
And is that the cherry blossom prints?
It is not. It's a new project called The Currency, which is a brand new thing that he's just revealed today.
Okay, because certainly in the last week or so, his cherry print paintings have certainly been most visually prominent in the news. But the second project, as far as I understand, is with HBO Max on the Space Jam movie. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that launched yesterday.
Excellent. So some of you might have seen back in the mid-90s, I think, the Warner Brothers crossover, so the animated / live action family cartoon with Michael Jordan, which now is in a reboot or a remake or a continuation with LeBron James. So there are NFTs in that area of animation. And I think you guys are also dipping your toe into collectibles with Major League Baseball.
Yeah, well, the Major League Baseball announced that they're going to be running exclusively on Palm on a new platform running on Palm called Candy Digital, which is a new platform from Galaxy Digital, Fanatics, which is the largest sports merchandising company in the US, and Gary Vaynerchuk are the 3 founding partners there. But yeah, that's one of many new platforms launching on Palm.
Great. So with that very brief context, at least in terms of what you might have bumped into in the recent press, I'll pass it over to Matt, who's going to give us a brief introduction to the background of the company, what they're busy with now, how it works, and then we'll have an extended Q&A for anyone and everyone to ask the questions that are most pertinent to their own professional concerns. It's all yours, Matt.
Thank you. Great. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to run through a quick sort of high-level presentation. Can everybody see this slide deck? So Palm was started around a very basic but pretty profound idea, and that is that the blockchain is going to become a creative medium, and this is really the sort of future that we're starting to scratch at with NFTs in 2021. But this idea that the blockchain itself is something that is going to give creativity new power. And the way that we think about it is, if you think about the world before the internet, we collected physical objects that meant something to us. That's how we conferred value, conferred status. That's how we demonstrated our allegiance to different subcultures. And then Web 2 kind of devalued some of that activity and some of that behavior with social media, which gave rise to new modes of expression, new ways of people connecting. And we think Web3 is kind of the best of both worlds. It's about social objects. So objects that can be both digital and valuable. And the blockchain is really the creative foundation of all of that. And, you know, up until now, we've thought about the blockchain as cryptocurrency, as DeFi. But what NFTs are really starting to show is that the blockchain can be a paintbrush, it can be a building block, it can be an open door into a new story world. And we really are thinking about them as the sort of future of art and distribution. as the most powerful form of fan engagement that we've ever seen, and a revolutionary force that's going to really drive culture in a number of new ways that we haven't even begun to think about yet. So when we started thinking about how are we going to build this, the idea of Palm NFT Studio was the brainchild of Dan Heyman, who's one of the co-founders and CEO. Dan was leading the protocols group at Consensus, leading the largest team of devs working on Ethereum 2, and really started to see that what was happening with the NFT space in earlier this year was a tipping point, for want of a better term, in terms of people understanding crypto. And Dan's idea was, well, hang on, we've got this amazing software, this enterprise grade stack, a Consensus that's powering all of DeFi, that's powering MasterCard and UBS and Microsoft and many other businesses. We've solved the scalability problem. If you take that software and you pair it with a different consensus mechanism to solve for the sustainability problem, then you've solved for most of the things that people right now are struggling with when it comes to NFTs, namely scalability and sustainability. And this has sort of led people to develop on different chains. We've seen lots of activity on Polkadot and Tezos, away from Ethereum, and the rise of new protocols like Flow, which are specifically designed for NFTs in the case of Flow. But all of these players are having to solve for scalability right now. They're not where Ethereum is, and DeFi is not about to jump onto a chain other than Ethereum. It's pretty clear that Ethereum is where all the money and all the sort of supply chain stuff and all the things that creators will need to connect to really build industries. It's already on Ethereum, and if you look at the layer 2 solutions on Ethereum, they're also trying to solve for scale right now. And they're not necessarily building specifically for NFTs. So the idea behind Palm was kind of twofold. We can create a new network, optimized for NFTs, that's operating as a sidechain on Ethereum, that will be 99% more energy efficient than the current proof of work system that Ethereum is using. And then we can build this NFT studio as well, this collective of artists, of entrepreneurs, of people in the fine art business, the entertainment business, who came together and really want to think about this idea of the blockchain as the medium. And that's a super floppy thing to say, but what it actually means is we can start thinking about the really hard problems of NFTs right now. All of our competitors are either solving for sustainability or scalability or both, and they're building to solve that. Because we have out-of-the-box software from Consensus that's already solving those two things, we can start to think about the really important questions, such as what is an NFT? What does an NFT mean in music? What does it mean in fine art? How do you use it to do social engagement, like we did yesterday when we partnered with Nifty and Warner Brothers to release 90,000 Space Jam NFTs that were available for a tweet, or for signing up to the Nifty's platform? Like, how do you do things like that, and what does social engagement look like with NFTs? How do you let artists really play with the idea of physical and digital with a large scale project the way Damien Hirst is going to do tomorrow when he launches the currency? So we've really been enabled to start asking some hard questions about NFTs and to create some really elegant, what we're kind of thinking of as concept cars. We feel like 2021, we're in the horseless buggy stage of the NFT industry. So we're referencing the industry that came before. Nobody really knows what a car is yet. And we want to build concept cars. We want to build really cool social objects across different mediums and different verticals, designed for different audiences that bury crypto complexity, but make really interesting use of the blockchain, so they can appeal to everybody, whether they're crypto native and they like the design of what we're doing, or whether they're just a fan of the franchise or the artist we're partnering with, who just wants this cool thing from this artist or from this story world that they love. And that's what the studio is really designed to do. So bringing projects onto the Palm network, helping usher in the best best in class talent and IP, and really showcasing what you can do on Palm, and then building the tool set and working with a governance community on the Palm network to roadmap the tool set that creators need, whether that's royalties, whether that's staking NFTs, whether that's imaginative new ways to do fractional ownership, or making cool changes at the token standard level that turn into fun mechanics at the fan level. We'll be working with the Creative Collective to really roadmap everything that we're doing at the network level. So we're really lucky in that we've got a great team. I think most crypto projects are only as good as their founding teams, and to have Consensus, which is obviously the largest pure play blockchain company, Heyday Films, founded by David Heyman, who's the third highest grossing film producer in the world behind Steven Spielberg and James Cameron, the producer of the Harry Potter films and many others. And then Joe Haig, founder of the Henny Group, who manages Damien Hirst, Gerard Richter, the estate of Francis Bacon, and many other fine artists. We really do have kind of best of breed talent across every vertical that matters in terms of tech, in terms of fine art and entertainment. Deal flow, which is one of the things that really attracted me to this project. I was lucky enough to be asked by Dan to come and be employee number one at Palm. My background's in crypto. I was previously CMO at Kraken, but really my background's in distributed technology and media. Before Kraken, I was head of marketing and chief content officer at BitTorrent, where we built a distributed content ecosystem for people to legally distribute work through BitTorrent using artificially scarce torrent files, which we started in 2011 and is still going, but was really a project that was thinking in much the same ways in terms of using distributed technology the way that the NFT ecosystem is doing that. But I grew up in London. I was a pirate radio DJ for much of my teens and early 20s. I was part of the dubstep scene and the grime scene and lots of the really great electronic music that came to exist in the UK because of an illegal network of distributed radio stations operating across tower blocks. And that's what got me so excited about the idea of people just being able to do things without middlemen or without points of centralization. It was an idea that was ingrained in me back then. I feel like NFTs is really that idea scaling at speed that I've never seen. So I'm really excited to be part of this company and this moment in time. This group, I think, knows who Consensus is and what Consensus is about. But the reason we think this is such a big deal to have Consensus as part of our founding team and our DNA is because Consensus controls the entire stack of software around the NFT ecosystem, which is for the most part built on layer 1 Ethereum. Most developers are developing using Infura. Truffle is the #1 development environment for smart contracts. You have Quorum, which is enterprise grade Ethereum software, and then all the way around to the consumer facing level, MetaMask is the most popular wallet for NFTs. So when you look at NFTs and how they're built, how they're made, how they're distributed, how they're paid for, Consensus is really there every step of the way. And one of the great things about Palm is that it's natively integrated with this entire suite of software and is using much of the same software under the hood. If you're developing on Infura, you will be able to develop on Palm. We've had people who are already running on layer 1 who are using Infura get their entire stack up and running on Palm inside of 30 minutes. So it's a really, really easy integration. It's very, very easy to get up and running on Palm if you're already using Infura and you're already using the Consensus stack, which is great news for a lot of developers. So as I said, we're building for scale and sustainability. We feel like we have a head start there. On the sustainability piece, we're using a rotating proof of work consensus mechanism. We are at present a sidechain, which is the downside of that is it's more centralized. And our roadmap is that we will become a layer 2 running on Ethereum before eventually rolling up into Ethereum 2. So we are roadmap to sort of continue decentralizing over time. But from now, most of the nodes in the centralized ecosystem we're using are not controlled by Palm. They're either controlled by Consensus or other partners, but we are already the minority on the sort of Palm ecosystem, which is great and something we feel good about. And you know, it's that commitment to decentralization that we wanted to be committed to even from the start, when a sidechain just made more sense in terms of getting up and running now. But as I've said, you know, it's what we're really focused on is imagination, is building for NFTs. We just feel that it's so early and nobody really knows what these are yet, including everybody who works for Palm NFT Studio. And we really try and remind ourselves of that every day. We're getting to work on what we think are, you know, some of the most groundbreaking projects in the space. And we've only announced a very, very small amount of the exciting things we're working on. We're working with some amazing partners on some things that, you know, are blowing our minds. And we know that this world is going to continue changing rapidly. We think in a year or two that the phrase NFT will probably go the same way as the phrase cyberspace, because eventually this will just be this is just how we're going to do things. It's how we're going to distribute content that we care about the most, and that we want people to interact with in different ways. We think NFTs are going to disappear in the way that they just become something that's everywhere and used in so many contexts that they just become part of the fabric of society. We're excited about what they mean for journalism, for non-profits, for film, for all of the fine arts, for remix culture. There's just so many applications that collectively nobody scratched the surface on yet. So we're really, really committed to thinking about that and keeping most of our focus there. In terms of how the system works, this diagram is just what this basically says is Ethereum. It's all on Ethereum. That was very important to us. You know, coming out of Consensus, the bet has been placed on Ethereum at Consensus already, and everybody working at Palm, everybody we're working with, is very much thinking along the same lines in terms of this is where Web3 is going to be. It doesn't make sense to build anywhere else. So having a stack on Ethereum specifically for NFTs just felt vitally important. You know, we don't think we'll be the only stack running on Ethereum. We're already competing with a handful of other layer twos and you know, various people in the space. We know there's more coming, and we think that's fine. There's probably room for everybody. If NFTs are the future of media distribution, there probably isn't going to be one giant company controlling all of media distribution in the same way we've seen on Web2. It just runs against the grain of everything that crypto's about. So, you know, we're excited to see competitors. We're excited to see lots of people developing on Ethereum and off Ethereum, although we think that's probably not the right thing to do. But there's just so much great stuff out there, and we think there's room for lots of different sidechains and layer twos that will effectively serve the same purpose as media formats did, if you're thinking about physical media distribution. In terms of the leadership team, so Dan Heyman, I've already mentioned. We haven't announced this formally yet, but Meredith Baxter, who's also was leading the Pegasus team, the Consensus, ETH1 and 2 Core Dev, again, is our new CTO. I'm serving as Chief Content Officer and really lucky to be working with this team. And then Straith Schrader is our Executive Creative Director, who was formerly the ECD Advice, and also worked with me at BitTorrent and Mozilla, so has again a strong background in decentralized layers on Web2. We are hiring rapidly. We've got a bunch of other amazing people who've joined in the last couple of weeks that we'll be announcing shortly. We're growing a really big team really fast, and it's the most talented team I've ever worked with, and I've been lucky enough to work with some really talented teams in my life, but I've never been more excited about a group of people that's coming together quite like this one. Our founding partners already mentioned, David Heyman, Joe Haig, and then Consensus and Joe Lubin, of course. Very, very, very involved, and it's great to be working with talent of this caliber at the kind of board level. It's really amazing. And the thing that we're all passionate about on the studio side, so it's this network that we're building, but it's also this studio, and it's really offering creative services to partners. You know, we're in this, it's a weird moment in that NFTs are exploding. Everybody wants to build NFTs. Almost everybody wants to build them on Ethereum. And it's really hard for a lot of IP owners and rights holders and creators to even think about how they might do that. Nobody even knows to be thinking about, I need to find a Solidity developer to help me. And of course, all the Solidity developers retired in the last couple of years because they made so much money on their Ethereum in 2021 that it's just harder than ever to build. So we really want to help people build. And we're putting together an amazing team, an amazing stack, to make it much, much easier to scale projects quickly for rights holders and artists and other people that we're collaborating with. So looking at some of the things that we do, we think about strategy a lot. You know, everybody in the NFT space will tell you the same story, and is that you get 10 to 20 people a day, often, you know, very famous, very impressive people or brands, coming to you, trying to sell something they've had, you know, gathering dust in a back room somewhere for years, that they think is going to make a great NFT. And, you know, that ship has sailed. The market has moved on. What we're seeing from NFT buyers is there's, you know, there's a real amount of fan fatigue. And the larger the project is, the larger the brand or the IP or the artist is, the more creative they need to be in terms of how they're thinking about using blockchain. You know, I've heard more artists than I care to mention say to me, well, if that little Beeple guy can get 69 million, imagine what I can do. And I feel like a lot of people who are new to NFTs are really missing the point of crypto art as it exists right now. You know, this is a culture. This is a space where people like Beeple and others have existed for a really long time and had big followings, and they may not seem big to a giant megastar, but this is a real culture. It needs to be protected, and it needs to be invested in. But the idea of everybody using NFTs is also valid. So when an artist or a creator or a rights holder comes to us saying they want to do something with an NFT, we want to help them do the right thing. We don't want to help them put out something mildly interesting that they've had gathering dust in a closet for years to an audience who's not going to buy that. We want to help them think about the blockchain as a medium. And, you know, that means incentive mapping. That means thinking about game mechanics. That means what's interesting about this studio is we've just started to invent things that we're doing because we need to. Like, I've never heard anyone else talk about NFT CRM or NFT consumer customer relationship management. Which is usually something you think about with email, right? You sign someone up for an email, and then 7 days later you send them another email, and 30, 60, 90, you keep reactivating them, and you measure the lifetime value of that person, and you have a relationship with them through email. Email's been pretty much the most effective marketing channel for CRM to date. You know, I don't know what the lifetime value is of the user of an NFT yet, in terms of an NFT that they engage with over a period of years. I know that it's higher than an email address, because NFTs are places of emotional connection. It's not your inbox. It's going to be a social object. It's going to be the place where you've connected with that artist or that IP or that creative work. And if that work starts talking to you, you're going to react in a different way. So there's so much to think about. And, you know, this is me picking one thing off this list, but we've got an entire team thinking about the entire spectrum of creative and marketing and technical product services that you might offer in relation to NFTs. And every day we hit more questions than answers. And, you know, if we weren't doing that, I would really, really worry, because I think if we don't know how little we know at this point, then we're going to fail. But it's, again, you know, an amazing group of people that are coming together, economists and token designers who I think in their wildest dreams didn't think they'd ever be working at creative studios. And as a recovering economics graduate, I take great pleasure in that. But there's this new discipline emerging. I think in the next 10 years, economists are probably going to be some of the most highly paid people at ad agencies, because bonding curves and pricing elasticity are mechanisms that people who are thinking about how to market food and drink and toys to kids and all kinds of fast-moving, slow-moving consumer goods are going to have to start thinking about the blockchain as a medium and economics as a new creative lever. So it's going to be really interesting, and we'd like to think of ourselves as kind of being at the vanguard of this whole thing. So, like I said, there's not much we can talk about that we're doing, but the few things that have launched. One thing was Juventus FC, which launched on a platform called Gear. It was a fairly conventional kind of auction of an NFT, but I know that Juventus team is planning a lot more through the fall, and Gear has got some really amazing brands coming to the platform as well. So we're really excited to get Gear up and running on Palm. Candy Digital is going to be the exclusive home of Major League Baseball, which is a huge win for us. So all of their collectibles will be launching on Palm. And then tomorrow, it was just announced today, but tomorrow Damien Hirst is releasing his currency project, which is a collection of 10,000 handmade works that he's been creating since 2016 that are currently all in a safe in London. Each one of these has been paired with an NFT. He's selling the physical and the NFT together for $2,000 for a flat price. I think this is probably the cheapest Damien Hirst you've been able to get since he left art school in the late 80s. It's certainly much cheaper than original Damien Hirst go for anywhere. So it's really exciting for us that he decided to do that. But the most exciting thing is this whole project isn't about buying a Damien Hirst. It's about experiencing this journey with Damien Hirst. So in a couple of months, he's going to give everyone who bought an NFT a hard decision to make. They're going to have to decide, do they want to keep the physical, original, handmade work in the safe in London? And if they do, he will send that to them. Or do they want to keep the NFT? And this time next year, so July 14th, 2022, he's going to burn all of the NFTs that people didn't want to keep. And he's going to burn all of the original artworks that people didn't want to keep. And his whole thing is, he just wants to see which one is more valuable. He wants to see how people treat these, what the secondary market looks like. He literally wants to make a currency, which I think is the thing Damien Hirst has been kind of moving towards his whole life in terms of being a critic and an accomplice of capitalism and consumerism. I mean, it just feels like the most perfect crazy thing that he could do, and it's so exciting to us that NFTs finally allowed him to think in this way and actually sort of create something where the line between money and art gets really, really blurry, which is really exciting. It was definitely a headache to think through with the SEC, but that's another great reason for being part of consensus and having that background. Is with NFTs, a lot of the legal challenges are actually more difficult than the engineering challenges. So it's really good to be buttoned up and have a good legal team. And it certainly mattered on this project. I can stop here if you guys like, or I can talk a little bit more about sort of some of the things we're thinking about in terms of different strategies and creative ways to use NFTs. I don't know what would be useful to this group.
I think that'd be great if you'd just like to talk through some of the more, whatever specifics you have left. We've got plenty of time for questions afterwards.
Great. Okay. Yeah, sure thing. So, these are just sort of some very generalized thought starters. Just some of the things we're thinking about without sort of naming names or talking about specific projects. So one of the things we're thinking about is interactive art. So blockchain lets you play with economics. It lets you play with time. Because NFTs are network aware, the behavior of people who own NFTs and things they do with NFTs, you can use to affect the appearance or value of that NFT in some ways. And one of the things we're thinking of is doing some interesting stuff with ideas around Genesis NFTs or one-of-one NFTs that can control an edition of many. So there's a couple of different examples that we're doing works like this in, but one way to think about this would be imagining a social network. In this social network, you can use filters. You could sell those filters as NFTs. You could do an open edition millions of filters that an influencer gave away to their fans. And then the influencer could sell a one of one, and the owner of the one of one could then change that filter. And when they change their one of one, it'll change every filter, every open edition of NFT of that filter in the network at once. You can apply this idea to a game. You can think about it in a different way. You can have many people controlling one rather than one controlling many. You can do many to many. You can do different groups controlling different NFTs, and then the way that they are architected affects how they interact. We're thinking about this in a number of ways across social networking, across music streaming, across gaming, and a couple of different other mediums as well. But it's a really cool idea. And you know, there's other groups out there. Async Art's done some really amazing work thinking in this way, and we're really excited about projects like this, because you know, this is, I think, is one of the examples of why blockchain can just be so much fun. And you can bury, or you don't have to tell people about crypto, and they can get excited about this and understand why crypto is interesting, and what digital original means, and what a one of one is versus one of many. It's just a really interesting way to show people all of the value of the blockchain. So dynamic objects that transform with macro plot lines is something that we're thinking about. So we're working with a lot of IPs where we are working with very complex story worlds. And on our team, we've got creatives who've worked on some of the most high profile IPs and franchises of our time in terms of you know, box office and reach in terms of size of AAA games, where they've had to think for all of their careers about how do I layer this complicated story across this film and this movie and this theme park and these 20 Happy Meal toys and this thing happening over here. And you know, what we did yesterday with Space Jam and Warner Brothers was really kind of just a taste of some of the things to come that we're thinking about in terms of how to just make something super fun and create a really expansive set of collectible cool objects that are dynamic, the fans can do amazing stuff with. You know, I think there's so much room here to play with. You know, if you think about giant IPs, whether it's a lightsaber or a wizard hat or some object that a fan can own, where that object is an NFT that can accrue value depending on how much the fan does and all the ways the fan engages with the franchise. You know, if they use it in the game, it accrues value. If they use it to unlock the new movie, it gains more value. If they take it to the theme park, it knows who they are and it gives them a slightly different experience. If they go into the branded hotel in the theme park and it knows who their favorite team is in the franchise, those team colors will be in their room when they go into their room. There's no ending of ways you can think about doing cool things with this. And that's, you know, that examples at the kind of giant franchise level, but this works for any artist. And I think, you know, there was a lot of great talk about Kevin Kelly's 1,000 True Fans essays when NFTs really started growing earlier this year. And, you know, if you can do this really interesting, engaging, dynamic stuff for just 1,000 people that love your work, they're going to continue to reward you, and they're gonna come on a journey with you that you wouldn't have been able to take them on before. So we're very excited about the dynamism here. Another thing that we think's got a lot of potential is the idea of a DAO, which I'm assuming everybody on this call probably knows something about already. But you know, one of the interesting things about NFTs is you're seeing this kind of Venn diagram of people who are interested in them, from people with crypto experience and creatives who've just got no idea about crypto. And most creatives we talk to, if we start talking to them about collectivism and participating in a new economy and having a voice and being able to decide on the framework of that new economy, they get very excited. If you start talking to someone who's not crypto native about a decentralized autonomous organization, you lost them at the word autonomous. It's really hard to explain so many of the core tenets of crypto to people who are not crypto native. And the DAO thing just seems like, well, you know, you can build a DAO around your favorite sports franchise team. You can build a DAO around your favorite kids IP where there are different gangs or leagues. This is just a great idea, and it's got so many other applications other than, you know, here's our GitHub and here's our Discord, join our DAO. So we're working on some really fun projects with DAOs. We're building our own creator collective DAO that will be called a creator collective, and not a DAO, but we'll have a GitHub and we'll have a Discord, but will exist in many other ways too. It will exist in real life. It will have events. It will have all of the things that we think a community needs to have to feel like a cool community that the creative class wants to be a part of. So we're really focused on this idea both at the studio level and in terms of all the partners that we're working with. We like to really think about, you know, how can you use a DAO to achieve creative goals and engage fan bases. So one thing we've seen a lot this year is really cool sort of merge and burn things. I think CryptoKitties from Dapper Labs was the best first example, but we've seen lots of others, Street Fighter 2 on the Wax chain, and we love this mechanic, and we're thinking about it in some really interesting ways going forward. One thing we love about this is the way you can apply this to music. So merge and burn games can be trading cards, or they could be drum breaks and bass lines and synth chords. And if you can merge and burn sections of songs together with your fans to make new songs, well, then your fans can earn money with you in terms of fractionalized ownership and being part of that song creation process. And we're working on a few projects to that end, which will, we think, not only show a new way to think about remix culture on Web3. We wanted to try and monetize remix culture end to end on Web3, but in no way impact all of the unofficial remixing that happens on Web2, because we think that's so valuable and so useful for creators across all mediums. But we also think there's a different business model for streaming here. Like if you talk to anyone who's thought about music streaming over the last 10 years, or you've listened to that conversation, you'll hear Spotify and others say, we're paying all of our money to the artists. And you'll hear all the artists saying, we never get enough money from this. And then right in the middle of it all, there's lots of labels who stay very quiet, whose market cap has tripled over the last 10 years. And, you know, we're not sure it needs to work like this. And we think Web3 can work slightly differently. So we're building a couple of different web music streaming concept cars that, you know, we don't think will in any way cut labels out, but might create different economics that are slightly fairer and more sustainable for the streaming services and the artists, and then by default also the labels. So we're excited about that and working on a few examples there. Generative art is just another really interesting thing that we want to play with. We are working with some really, really cool IPs. But again, this is an idea that sort of gets back to the idea of the remix, which on Web2 has always been a minefield for brands and IPs and artists, because if you just give everybody control of something, you don't necessarily know what's going to happen. And a lot of the time that can be really good, but sometimes not. With generative art, you can let fans make their own work, but you can set the parameters of what they make it with in a way that's still interesting to the fan. And we've seen this with CryptoPunks, with Creeps and Weirdos, with lots of, you know, more recent projects. And we love this idea, and we think, you know, when you start applying this to story worlds and actual storytelling and getting fans involved at that level, you're going to come up with some new ways to develop franchises. And we're working with some of the most high-profile creators of franchises in the world to create franchises this way that will start as NFT projects before becoming full-fledged, you know, movie, theme park ride game that will take about 5 years to develop, but will start very soon as a very simple NFT that gets fans in from day one. So we're really excited about stuff like that. Collective action is something that we're thinking about a lot. You know, we're working with a bunch of different nonprofits, and this idea that, you know, again, fundraising, the place that happens the most is knocking on doors and emails, and NFTs offers something new in terms of a perennial fundraising social object. So how do you partner with a great artist or great creator with a great nonprofit or cause to do something really interesting? We have a lot of artists coming to us asking this question. We have a lot of nonprofits, and we've been able to pair several groups of people together that we're really excited about in terms of the things that they're working on and the impact that they're going to be able to make. Because of, again, what you can do with an NFT, you can map entire areas of the planet and slice up that map as an NFT, which you can then give people the rights to adopt and sponsor, and they can see it changing dynamically over time. And this is stuff that you can record on chain, and you can do collective network aware mechanics with the entire map or just certain sections of it. So looking at lots of projects around sustainability and the ecosystem, it's something that fits with us for sure. It's a big focus for us. But it's also something lots of artists have come to us and wanted to know, can I do something about this? We've had lots of different bands, especially coming to us saying, I want to do something with NFTs, but my fans hate it. They think it's like driving a Hummer because of the eco impact. I understand that there's ways to do this without that, but that's not enough. What else can we do? So really thinking about how do we help the creative industries have more of an impact in terms of corporate social responsibility and other industries too. But I mean, I think this is going to be a major application of NFTs unfolding over the years. So the metaverse is one thing we haven't really talked about. But I really think this is where everything's going, and I've long been bearish on VR, but I'm just seeing so many amazing applications of AR in the metaverse now and ongoing, and things that are coming up in the next couple of years that we've been able to preview. That it seems fairly inevitable that this is happening, and so your filter and your avatar and your social, the way you look in game and the way you look on socials and the way you look in real life, those things are going to blur. And if AR is going to be tied to identity, then NFTs is a way to prove provenance and create scarcity that's going to be really useful. And so we're thinking a lot about how does that AR apply in the metaverse and outside the metaverse, and stay connected and network aware. So we talked about NFT-based CRM. This is something across every vertical over the next year, across music, across film, across games, across journalism, across fundraising. I really want to understand this number. What is the LTV of a fan for this artist, for this film, for this nonprofit? And what's the LTV of their email address? What is the LTV of their wallet address? And getting them a really cool NFT. I think it's much higher than the email. I really hope I'm right about that, because I think that's really the key to this thing scaling. It's, what we're seeing right now is NFTs changing hands for millions of dollars. We think that's going to be a tiny sliver of the market, and 99% of NFTs will be given away for free. They will be about engagement. They will be about incentivizing fans to do cool things together that add value to an IP or to an artist and do create revenue. But most of it's just going to be about getting people to do things and recording behavior and rewarding behavior. So really thinking about that deeply is something that we're pretty committed to. And then the last thing I've got here is fractionalized ownership. So, letting people actually participate in a project on the ground floor. This is just going to change how we develop films, how we develop music, how songwriting happens, how journalism happens. There are so many different applications of this idea. The hard part about it is securities law. It's really hard to sell something to a fan. If it doesn't exist yet, it's a security. If it does exist, you publish it somewhere and you give them a chance to own a piece of it, it's not a security. And so there's, thinking through that, getting more clarity on this from the SEC and other governing bodies around the world in the next couple of years is going to be tremendously helpful. But this is a really interesting piece of this. It's going to change the entire business models of various verticals across the media industries. So that was a lot. Thanks very much for listening to all my galaxy-brained ideas about NFTs. I hope maybe some of them come true. And I'm really excited to take questions and talk to you guys more. So I'm going to stop sharing and let's get into the Q&A.
Thank you very much. That was really thorough. So we have 3 ways of asking questions. We have the chat here on Zoom. We've got the comments on YouTube, or if you just want to unmute yourself and ask, that will also be great. So please do as you will, and let's see how disorderly it becomes. Who's brave enough to ask the first question?
All right, Daniel, I think you.
Hello, Matt. Thank you for the presentation. It's been fantastic. I'm very excited. I've spoken to Daniel and some of the other folks at Palm about this work, and it's the kind of projects that I think get a lot of attention, and that also is like just a unique way to do it. And especially today's announcement with the what I would call offline and online art, and those decisions. It's going to be an interesting experiment beyond, the actual technology, but the experiment of what people decide and how the market dictates what they will decide. And when do they decide it? Like, it's all going to be like 20 minutes before their deadline, or is everybody going to make a decision based on what the rest of the people? But there's a lot of great stuff that you're doing. One of the questions that I have, and I work here at Hyperledger, I'm part of the staff team, is, when we talk about quorum, specifically from a consensus perspective, there's always a question as to, is it Hyperledger, Besu, or is it Quorum Go, which is, the native quorum project. So question for you is it Hyperledger, Besu all the time on these projects, or do you have options?
I'm going to get way out over my skis here, as I'm the sort of the non-technical person that Dan brought in first. But I hear Hyperledger basically talked about 100% of the time in terms of how we're doing things right now. I don't know if that's always going to be the case. It's definitely a question I will field to Dan, and I'll try and get him a good answer for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, Pegasus, right? Obviously, Pegasus is the Besu brand. It would be great to maybe as a follow-up, David, we can get a technical deep dive as well, specific to Besu. And we know that there's, it's agnostic. Some of these, platforms will be agnostic as well.
Matt, what about museums? You guys do anything with museums at all, or galleries? I mean, not, well, galleries, yes, but museums in particular.
Yeah, we've been talking to a number of museums about different collections. But yeah, I think the exit through the gift shop model is going to apply to NFTs just as much as it does to physical things. And being able to give people in museums really interesting live experiences when they're there together. I mean, that's a venue where you've got a captive audience. You've got a group of school kids or a group of tourists who are all standing in front of one physical artifact together. And, I think, today that's people with headphones on or listening to a tour on their phone. In future, that's people interacting with a network aware object. They're in the museum that they can take home with them, that can unfold and will have a story attached to it, and CRM, and we'll keep them connected to that exhibit, and educate. And there's so many things you can do there. So yeah, that's the long answer. The short answer is yes, we're talking to and working with a few museums.
And are you doing anything specifically with education? I mean, to help sort of, younger users to familiarize themselves with your technology?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, we are. And I think that's, in the case, there's some very explicit cases that, again, this relates to museums, where the museums have said, look, this is part of what we do. Education has to be something that we do. And so we're designing projects that really speak to that. But I think the really high impact piece of NFTs, as far as young audiences go, is kids are so much more in tune with currency and the idea of having multiple currencies in finance. Like, I was talking to someone the other day about this who grew up in London. It's like our earliest memory of money was a bank in the UK came up with these like cartoon piggy banks that you could buy. or you get for opening an account. And I distinctly remember, like, this was the first time I thought, oh yeah, money. That's weird. I should get some of that. Mum and dad have some of that. And I was like, I think 6 or 7, and my nieces and nephews who are that age already have like V-Bucks accounts and Robux accounts, and most of the money they've ever spent is on digital goods. If you're trying to, I have so many conversations with grown-ups where I'm trying to explain why anybody would possibly ever buy a JPEG. But if you talk to a 7-year-old about NFTs, they're like, what's that? And say, well, you know, all those skins you bought in Fortnite that you've lost because you bought a new Xbox. Well, it just means you can take them with you forever. Mm-hmm. That's the best idea they've ever heard. So in terms of education, like when you start thinking about things like staking, you know, staking, if I'm trying to explain staking Tezos on Kraken, that's hard. If I say to a kid, here's a dog, and if you keep this dog in this kennel, it will have puppies. That's also that's staking an NFT. And suddenly that kid is like, okay, that's cool. And I understand that there's some level this is a token. Why doesn't my money work like that? So I think the generation of kids that grows up on NFTs is going to start being very demanding of their banks when they grow up. And we're going to see a bunch of new financial services that banks can't even imagine they're going to have to offer.
Right. We've got 3 questions for you while we were talking. The first one is, what will be a good strategy to convince or invite traditional artists to know and then embrace this technology and the NFT world?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, I think I like the drug dealer strategy for this. First one's free, kid. So give someone an NFT. And it's like a drug. It's like, it's an intangible experience. So the first time, I don't know if you've all had this, but I've discussed this with lots of people, and I think there's something here. It's like the first time you buy an NFT, you feel something, and you feel a connection to it. And maybe that was just me and my friends who like NFTs, and lots of other people like, this is stupid. Why did I waste my money on this? But there's something about owning an NFT that's very intangible. And so I think giving people NFTs so that they can understand what it means is going to be really important, and it's something that we're very, very committed to at Palm. So you'll see lots of that from us.
Second question, would Palm work with games to create unique skins or a way to craft any NFT items and work with the ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something we're doing a lot of. We're working with games to do this, and we're working with brands that don't currently have games to build social objects that feel a lot like games. And you know, it's just everything that NFTs are about is going with the grain of where gaming already is. And I think the good thing about NFTs is it gets away from a lot of the grind mechanics and a lot of the kind of loot box stuff that is really starting to wear thin on a lot of gamers, and it gets more into doing things that create real rewards and meaningful connections with other gamers and with the IP itself, and being able to be a lot more imaginative about how you do those things in ways that actually create way more value than if you do kind of, you know, check back every day loot box grind mechanic stuff. So yeah, gaming I think is probably the biggest opportunity for NFTs.
Mm-hmm. Third and final question, do you see Palm as a competitor or a collaborator to existing platforms that are already known for innovation in the metaverse, such as Async, Artblocks, and NFT20?
Yeah, so all of those people mentioned we know and love dearly and look up to, and they're all doing amazing, amazing things. And I just think this entire space there, it's weird because on one hand there's this huge land grab going on, and there's this wars between, like, we're definitely competing with other sidechains and crypto platforms for projects, and we hear from people we're talking to that we know that we're competing with 2 or 3 other people, and it's definitely competitive, but none of that stuff really matters. And every time I hear that something else went somewhere else, I'm like, all right, well, that's fine, because it's year 0 of this, and I'm not, so all of the people mentioned here, I don't think of as competitors at all. These are all platforms that we would like to see running on Palm. These are all teams that we would like to see doing cool things on Palm, and we're just as excited to see them doing cool things off Palm, because frankly these 3 are some of the most inspiring groups that I know about in terms of what they're doing creatively with blockchain.
Well, with that, I think we are done with the questions. So thank you very much indeed for such a thorough presentation. And in the meantime, actually, as Daniela mentioned, what we'd like to do is maybe get one of your colleagues on to talk about some of the nuts and bolts of the mechanism on a slightly, from the engineering point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we can definitely set that up. I'm thinking maybe Meredith, our CTO, or Alex Skeen, who's working on Hiteknug, and he's now come over and is working on products on Palm. He could be great. I know everybody's going to be busy tomorrow, but we can definitely set that up in the coming weeks for sure.
Especially as it relates to Besu, obviously, that'd be super cool.
Yeah. Alex and Meredith is probably the best bet for that.
Okay, well, listen, thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. It was really lovely talking to you all.
You too. See you soon.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Too.
Bye.